Thank you so much. Just one picture.
This is the opening line of the first essay, which also serves as the introduction to the book. It's called "Oh, but you don't look like a Muslim." I've always wondered how one is supposed to look like one's religion. Save for outward tokens such as a turban or a topi, a beard or a burqa, how can one give instant proof of one's religious beliefs? Yet, growing up in Delhi, all through my school, college, and university, while negotiating an assortment of jobs and offices, not to say social occasions, I've heard this comment delivered in tones ranging from surprise to approval. With time, I have understood that the speaker is trying to give me a backhanded compliment. Since I don't look like a Muslim, I'm okay. I'm not quite one of them. And the them being the bomb throwing, beef smuggling, jihad spouting Muslim of popular imagination. By extension, I might even, at a stretch, be considered one of us. I think what has riled me all along is not so much that you're supposed to look like this or that, but the sense of approval that seems to underline this, that you're okay. And then people have gone so far as to say, agar sabhi Musalman aise hote, tab hame koi problem na hoti. Now this is such a problematic statement at so many levels. पहली बात ये कि आप हैं कौन जिसको प्रॉब्लम हो रही है. दूसरी बात, क्यों सब लोग एक से लगें. दिस होल नोशन ऑफ एवरीबडी बीइंग कट फ्रॉम द सेम क्लॉथ. This book was launched on the 4th of June at the Constitution Club, and one young woman, there was the launch happened and the usual discussion and the usual question and answers and everything, and then one young woman raised her hand and said, but what happens if you do look like a Muslim? And this lady she was wearing a hijab and she was speaking in English, she was addressing us. She made a very passionate, very vocal, very eloquent argument as to what happens when you look like a Muslim. And that is indeed the other side of the argument that I am trying to raise. In my case, I don't happen to look like one, so I am presenting my case. But that lady's argument was just as valid. So what if she looks like a Muslim? Is she vastly different? Is she therefore frightening? Is she automatically somebody to be distrusted? And in that room, as it so happens, among 100 odd people, she happened to be the only person wearing a hijab. I mean, just the head covering. And I'm very glad that she chose to raise her hand and ask this question. And this is something we need to ask ourselves too. Now, if I'm writing a longish essay saying why I'm against the burqa, I think it's because it doesn't work for me, which doesn't give me the right to then sort of denounce, decry and look down upon those who wear it for whatever reason, out of choice, out of compulsion, or religious reasons, social mores, neighbors, parents, elders, that's their lookout. So I think somewhere we come to the element of choice. In religion, in religious practices, even in looking, in the whole business of looking, And then in this essay, in this the opening para where I read, I think so many factors go into what you look like. It could be your education, it could be your class. Let's not forget that your social class, as it were. In Delhi, people of a certain social class automatically buy clothes from Fab India and wear those, so they look like Fab India people. So that's all right too. So this whole business of expecting people to look like something, this is a troubling idea, and this is something we just need to question. And somewhere, if I may say so, it's not as though this was written before the election, and of course great things were being hoped for. And the publisher wanted to bring it out and launch it just before the election. Possibly he had a better sense of the outcome than I did. But clearly this was not written just for the election. These are things that had been brewing in my mind for a very long time. You don't pull out 40 essays like rabbits from a hat and produce them. I think the impulse behind putting these essays together is basically to call out the elephant in the room. And I think the elephant in the room is communalism. We can no longer run away from the fact that we do live in a deeply divided society. We do live in a society that is increasingly polarized, increasingly communalized. I was born in 63, sort of found my bearings, found my feet in India, which was still, it had vestiges of a Nehruvian socialism. People didn't say wo Hindu hai, wo Musliman hai. It took us a very long time to even allow ourselves to use these words, things that are so common, you know. The Urdu speakers here would know that at best, if a point needed to be made in Urdu, they would say ahle hunood, you know. But even that was something that was not done as a matter of course. And today, as a matter of course, we say Hindu and Muslim. You know, it's a binary that we reinforce in so many ways. Sometimes what we think is a benign way, but actually it just reinforces that binary, and in the process it normalizes that binary. It normalizes a way of seeing things in two distinct ways. So coming back to the Nehruvian India that I kind of grew up in, and where of course, there was vestiges of socialism. India had not opened up. It took Narasimha Rao to open the economy. You walked into a shop and you had a choice of maybe 3 or 4 shampoos. On the roads, you saw 2 cars, the Fiat and the Ambassador. It was a closed economy, but unlike the USSR, we didn't always have to queue up for basic necessities. When I look back at my childhood in Delhi, I don't remember a time of acute want. Yes, there were times during the wars with Pakistan and China when things were in shortage, fuel and so on was in shortage. But I don't look back on a childhood of extreme thrift or extreme want or extreme poverty in any way. I mean, and I've talked about some of those. My mother is sitting here. She had coined a term for all of us called Gharelu Dawat. How I've written a whole essay on Mummy's Gharelu Dawat. The idea of making do with little, not less, but little, and how that can be turned into fun. And I think these are the vestiges of Nehruvian India that I saw and enjoyed, which I wanted to share with younger people. You pick up the phone and you order Domino's. That was not it. A lot of planning and thought went into her Gharelu Dawats. Who likes what is in season, and different tastes needed to be catered to. So you had a dawat at home, which need not have been very fancy, but there were ways and means in which it could be made a special occasion. So the idea of celebrating special moments in an otherwise ordinary life, I talk about those as well. You know, so there are, you know, there's a slogan that came out. I'm drifting a bit here, so I'm picking different ideas that are in the book. There is a slogan that came out of the feminist movement of the 60s, the personal is the political. I think we all have led lives where we can mine those moments and somewhere we can make common cause with larger ideas.
So these are all things, little things, as she said, that water has to be preserved, or electricity all the time. You think your father is an eccentric character, but he was not. He was actually telling you that, because Lal Bahadur Shastri said, don't eat for one day. People were not eating for 1 day. And when Lal Bahadur Shastri died, my mother was crying in my house. There was no food cooked in my house. So there was identification with the Prime Minister of India in a very completely different manner.
But you talk of cinema, which has done such a huge service for Urdu, for a kind of a secular fabric, keeping Urdu alive at a very difficult time, right after partition, when Urdu was the language of those who had gone away. So खुल के जब कहा जा रहा था कि तुम जब चले गए तो अपने साथ अपनी ज़बान क्यों नहीं ले गए, इसको यहाँ क्यों छोड़ गए? At that time, and we see this flowering of Urdu in cinema, we see it in fiction, we see it most especially in the short story. There is Urdu, which is being kept up by Hindi films, but there's also a kind of way of life. I'll come back to Nehru, who I must confess I'm a bit of a fangirl. Nehru is making his dramatic statement to the nation. Nehru is saying, let the temples of modern India be the dams, the colleges, the factories. Yeah? And this is being interpreted by the film lyricist, by the filmmaker in very many different ways. A whole breed of lyricists, filmmakers, script writers are interpreting Nehru's dream. And Nehru has a good, let's say, run of almost 15-20 years till his death, and even immediately after, that dream is being interpreted in different ways. So you have songs that talk about छोड़ो कल की बातें, कल की बात पुरानी, आओ मिलकर लिखें नई कहानी. And so there is Naya Daur, Leader, all of these, a whole bunch of films, I mean, so many films. And the progressives who have their own agenda, as it were, who are finding ways of slipping in these things. So the whole, this wonderful partnership between Kaifi Azmi and Vijay Anand, it produces a clutch of absolutely stunning films with very memorable. He writes one on तेरे सीने में जो ये फूल छुपाए, ये it's written on Nehru, so there's some very evocative lyrics that are being written. So I think we all know about this phenomena called the Muslim socials, which had, I can remember several with Sadhana and Rajinder Kumar, some shot in Aligarh, others shot in uniquely, identifiably Muslim locales. It could be a university, it could be some Imambara or some very identifiably Muslim looking architecture. And so you had these women in Bararas singing certain kind of songs and so on. So these were fairly far removed from society. I mean, this was not the norm. This was somebody's idea of the norm. And something that I pick up as a thread all through this book is whose idea of a norm is this? Because it is not my idea of a norm. But certainly some of the concerns that I have picked up here are, let's see, a whole variety of things, and I am conscious that I'm sitting in Jamia, but in the Jamia neighborhood, but one of my big concerns here in some of my writings is this whole notion of identity, of minority institutions. I've written an essay on, I lived in Jamia in this, I worked here and lived in this neighborhood for a very long time. So I have talked about the Patla House incident. I've talked about how some of us were already acutely aware of a kind of ghettoization, and how that ghettoization was sharp immediately after Patla House happened. After Patla House, if you bought an AC, you could buy it from a showroom, but the person to install it wouldn't come. He'd say, hum udhar nahi jayenge. Of course, things improved after a while, but there was a knee-jerk reaction, and that was a very sharp reaction for those of us who lived here. All of us in this neighborhood were painted with the same brush. Those of us who worked here, it was very difficult for us in many ways. I was talking to some young people here just before this started, and I said that maybe my information is a little behind the times, so I was checking if things have improved. Apparently they haven't. One of the concerns I've raised in one of the essays here is that there is no Safal outlet in Jamia. Why? In the rest of the city, you buy your milk and your vegetables and your other consumables from a Safal outlet. There is no Safal outlet here. It defies sense. The Vice Chancellor in 2007, with a lot of insistence, managed to have a small one installed near the hockey field, but that only sells milk products, and they get finished very soon. So very small supply comes. Certainly no vegetables, certainly not the usual things that a housewife in any part of the city takes for granted.
I was born into Islam. I don't think so I would be wearing the hijab myself, being the person that I am. But to some extent, I think I do agree with this sort of thinking that women should be allowed to wear what they want, whether it's hijab or not.
Always women who decide whether they should or not. Many times it is their families, most often their fathers or brothers or husbands or neighbors or society that decides for them. In instances, and I know of those instances as well, where women whose mothers don't, for instance, wear hijab, the daughters for whatever reason choose to do it, and that's fine, you respect that choice. But and for me, coming back to the example of France, I mean, Sarkozy was an awful man, awful in every way. His politics was bad and flawed, and so it really stuck in my gut to say this, that I actually agreed with that ban. Maybe the ban is not the way forward. Maybe if this was implemented in India, we'd all be up in arms, and rightly so. But my feelings on the burqa and the all-defining black garment are very strong.
A
as if the most important thing is like, the Hindu-Muslim division. That's like the narrative which is now. Whereas we are running out of water as a country. Like, Bangalore has no water, Chennai has no water, and we are wearing masks here, and these are like real issues where like, we are on the brink. And can this in some way like unite us? Because,
Absolutely.
Well, large parts of Shaheen Bagh, from what I recall, do not have potable drinking water. People actually buy water. And we don't have to go very far. It's right here, down the road.
I used to go out on a lot of open mics. तो मेरे कुछ दोस्त बने, एक्वेंटेंसेस थे पहले, तो उनके स्टोरीज आते थे इंस्टाग्राम पे कि मेरी एक दोस्त थी बचपन में, मेरी माँ ने उनसे दूर करा दिया, मतलब बात करने नहीं दिया, और अभी भी ईद आती है तो मुझे दुख होता है क्योंकि मैंने कभी सेवई नहीं खाई। इस बार घर पे मैंने बहुत लोगों को फ़ोन करके बोला कि यार ईद है, बिरयानी खाने आओगे नहीं क्या? तो मतलब उन्होंने भी फ़ोन करके मुझे ये नहीं कहा कि मारिया बिरयानी कब खिलाएगी।
कुछ साल पहले तक we had at least we could expect to fall back on our friends and colleagues to speak up. लोगों की ability बोलने की for something like this, नारे लग रहे हैं, and they know it's wrong and not the right place, but people would prefer to be silent. I think so. We need to stop expecting people to fight our battles. Even one voice should be loud enough and should be heard. If you think this is wrong, just speak up. My daughter is roughly your age, and she talks of incidents in class during a discussion. The discussion in class starts from a technical point and suddenly takes a communal twist. It just happens organically, right? But it will be left to her, as possibly the lone Muslim in that class, to speak up and defend it. She finds it burdensome sometimes, but I tell her she has to do it if she wants to do it. If she doesn't want to do it, that's also fine. Nobody can force you. You don't have a stake in that argument and you step away from it if that is what you want to do. But if you feel invested in that argument, if you feel you have a stake in that argument, then you do speak up. And she says till a few years ago, or till maybe a year ago at least, her friends would join in that argument. Now she's the lone person making that stand. This will happen, and this is going to happen for some time, till hopefully things will change. I'd gone to Pakistan for a book discussion, and there was this safari suited gent who was tailing me wherever I went, and whichever group I was standing and talking to, he would be at the fringes of it, and he didn't look like a person for a book launch. He looked like a IB person. So anyway, at some point he says to me, "Madam, जब हम आप जैसे लोगों को देखते हैं तो हमें बहुत दुख होता है." So I said, क्यों दुख होता है? I mean, trying to understand if I know him, is he somebody I've met? He says, हम तो आ गए, आपको हम पीछे छोड़ आए. And that is a Pakistani mindset. That is a Pakistani's way of looking at Indians. I think I'm hugely better off, or my family, my siblings, my future, grim though it might seem right now sitting here after these elections, but no matter what, it is hugely better, and there is no doubt at all in my mind, I mean absolutely no doubt in my mind, that the decision to not go was a very wise one. It may not have been that well thought through, it may have been instinctive, it may have been simply liking Nehru more than liking Jinnah, I don't really know. But whatever be the reason, the cumulative effect of all of those reasons, that okay, वो तो theocratic state होगा, ये जैसा भी है secular country है, constitution हमारा बन भी गया था काफ़ी जल्दी, वहाँ तो अभी भी नहीं बना है, so stuff like that. I think overall there is no doubt in my mind, and this is what I try and tell my children as well, that we have our bad phases, but we do have strengths, we do have a kind of fellowship, we have very vibrant civil society groups. There is no muzzling on people sitting and talking. Yes, this is in a closed room, but we can just as well have this conversation outside, and people do all the time in public spaces. These are things that we shouldn't be sneezed at. Come and see who I am, come and celebrate my festivals, relive my memories, travel with me, share my doubts and dilemmas. Yes, I'm different, but then who isn't in a country as plural, as multicultural, as multilingual and multi-ethnic as ours? Is an Assamia speaking, rice eating, mekhla chadar wearing woman from the banks of the mighty Brahmaputra not different from a Punjabi speaking, makki ki roti and sarson ka saag eating, salwar kameez wearing woman from the land of 5 rivers? Are geographical, cultural, linguistic differences erased by the commonality of religion alone? Am I different from them simply because in the mix of all other differences you throw in the difference of religion? Does my being a Muslim make me different from others to the extent of constituting a threat to the idea of being Indian? I sincerely hope not.